I'm Laurie Brown, and more importantly, we have a very special guest, and that is Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull. Welcome to Toronto again.
Thank you. You look like the kind of girl who always smiles. They were telling you to smile before we went on the air, but you look like you just have a smile all day, every day.
Well, I'm so glad you said that, because a few days ago I wasn't smiling. I was feeling overworked, but now I feel a lot better.
Now you feel terrific again, yeah.
I want to ask you, I mean, after 20 years, your music to me always sounds so rich, musically, lyrically, and visually. I mean, how do you get through periods of do you ever feel drained or watered down?
Yeah, on Mondays, usually. Yes, of course. I mean, the whole thing is up and down. I think whatever you do, whether you work in this kind of job or doing the other things I do in the aquaculture business or working in a bank or being a policeman, whatever your job is, I mean, you must have days when you just loathe it, where you just wish more than anything else you were doing something else, anything else. I mean, it wouldn't be natural if it was any different. So yeah, I mean, there are days when I just hate it.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad to hear
but
it.
it's once in a while, you know, and you get over it. You have to get over it because you have the responsibilities of doing a show that night or coming and smiling on television or whatever it is, you know. So you just have to get over it, and you usually do. But no, it would be wrong to pretend that it's fun all day, every day, because it isn't. There's a lot of it is hard work, even though you're doing it for fun, or I'm doing it for fun. I mean, I don't need to do this for a living, but it primarily being something I do because I enjoy doing it, there are still days when I think, what on earth, was I kidding myself when I said this was going to be the holiday tour? Yeah.
Well, tours are never really a holiday, are they? There's a lot of just the physicality of the whole thing. I mean, that's something that you do very well and you seem to enjoy. Well, what are we going to expect?
Well, it beats the hell out of doing sit-ups every day, which is what our guitarist does. I mean, they have this, see, as you get old, as you veer unerringly into middle age, you see. I mean, some people get this thing about how they've got to get fit and, you know, start jogging every day and all the rest of it. Our guitar player does it incessantly, you know, and has lost a vast amount of weight and looks, you know, terrific, except that he's so knackered at the end of the day that he stands on stage too tired to do anything. Whereas I make sure I don't do anything physical all day until it's, I mean, my 2-hour workout is when I go and do a concert, which seems about the right time of the day to do it. And then, have a beer in the bar afterwards and put back on what I lost on stage in terms of vital bodily fluids.
Well, this time around, I mean, there have been some incredible sets for Jethro Tull tours. What are the people at the Gardens going to expect this day? We just lost a light. We just lost a light. We just lost a light.
Live television, isn't it? Live television. We'll get this together.
All right. So what will the show look like tonight?
A bit like that. Things go on and off. Usual minor technical disasters, which hopefully the audience aren't too aware of. I think we gave up a long time ago doing what people thought were production tours. In other words, having gimmicks on stage or effects and sort of pyrotechnics and lasers and all that sort of stuff. I mean, it really seems very old hat now on the rare occasion when I go to a concert and see somebody else doing it. I mean, it's real. I mean, I think what is entertaining is people, and what is entertaining about them is what they do and how they communicate with an audience musically in between songs or whatever. So, I mean, that's really the only thing that matters to me. I don't any longer have any interest at all in the theatrical elements of music. However, having been doing it for 20 years, as you so rightly said, you learn to do it, I suppose, in a way which is inherently theatrical, but you're not conscious of it anymore. So yes, it is still a performance, and there's an audience there, and we're actually doing something which is in some way a bit larger than life, but without the obvious kind of production or theatrical elements. I mean, it's not like a Michael Jackson show, and there are no gadgets and things looking flashy. I mean, we just try and play decent music, and we hope that people can hear it and people can see it. Beyond that, it's no great production effect. So.
The Crest of the Nave, the new album, when I go back and listen to older albums, when you were first coming out, the idea, it was an album-oriented crowd. I mean, in the 70s, people were buying albums and listening to them as albums, and you were doing full concept albums. Well, now in the late 80s, this is a very singles-oriented market. Have you changed your approach to putting together an album than you did in the early 70s?
Not really, because a lot of the albums that we made that people labeled conceptual were really not at all. They were just a bunch of songs that some of which might have had some common thread running through them, but they weren't really concept albums. That was just the flavor of the early 70s to make everything a little bit overblown and grander and larger than life. But I don't think it. I mean, we maybe made 3 albums at the most, which might have possibly been considered concept albums, but I certainly no more than 3. And out of whatever it is, 20, 21, 22 records or something we've made, I mean, the majority have been song collections, which is what this one is, and what I'm sure the next one will be. But in this singles-oriented market, it's one that it takes place, it has no point of reference for me. I mean, I've never been part of the mainstream of rock music, let alone pop music. We've always been out on the edge of it somewhere, and we were just marginally fashionable for a period of, I don't know, a year in the UK, maybe a year in Germany, a couple of years after we were popular in the UK, and then a couple of years after that we had a sort of period of being slightly the fashionable underground act in North America. But, you know, apart from those brief sort of little periods of time when we were, if you like, we appeared to be what it was all about in that particular moment of time, you know, we've just kind of hung in there very much on the basis that we began, which is the perennial underground group. We are, and I mean, we rely largely by word of mouth for our ability to continue in what is, as you say, a commercial and singles and hype-oriented marketplace.
Well, considering this is a commercial and singles hyped marketplace, we're going to play your first single from The Quest of the Knave. Here's Steel Monkey on MuchMusic. Back live in the studio with Ian Anderson, and I'm wondering, the new album, Crest of the Knave, I can't decide whether it's more about traveling or about female athletes.
Yeah, well, it's whatever you want it to be about, really. It's like all the things I ever write. I mean, I can't remember why I wrote them, because they just, I mean, the good songs, you never recall actually writing them. They're just ones where you get sort of like a half idea in your head, and you happen to have a piece of paper and a pen, and you start writing, and then sometime later, be that 5 minutes or 50 minutes later, you say, whoops, you know, did I do that? And they're always the best ones. I mean, they're totally unself-conscious.
Well, the structure of the song seems complex, and the words are not traditional pop lyrics. They read more. There's more of a line to them, and yet they both fit together. What comes first? Do the words come first, and then the music miraculously fits it, or is it a real struggle to get them sounding so alike?
Well, I don't have a way of writing music which I repeat. I mean, I have, rather than a formula, I probably have 6 or 7 or whatever different formulas. They come down to formulas at the end of the day, but I don't like to write 2 consecutive songs starting from the same point each time. So sometimes I'll have a title for a song and everything else follows on from that. Sometimes a bit of music, sometimes it's a set of lyrics, sometimes a couple of choruses and 1 verse. But I mean, I try and do it differently every time. Like I try and write on using different instruments with consecutive songs, so they don't end up being quite the same as each other. Because if you do everything in terms of saying, I'm going to write the lyrics first and then I'm going to compose the music using an acoustic guitar, there's going to be a very stylized end result out of that, if, as I am and most people are, fairly limited in their real ability musically. So, I mean, I just try and tackle the thing from a different standpoint each time.
What do you think about, I mean, you've grown into this idea of video, and I mean, you've always been highly visual on stage. What do you think about video and putting...
Well, I think it's probably like taking a Shakespearean actor and asking him to do a serious sort of characterful movie, because, you know, you have learnt to put things across by trial and error, to communicate, you know, your stuff and put it across emotionally through trial and error, and you develop mannerisms and gestures which are fairly large. And in the video context, those kind of things don't really largely work. Most people say, oh yes, of course, Jethro Tull would be great on video because they're such a visual group, but it's completely opposite. If I was a video director, I'd be looking for the guy who just kind of stood there and had a pretty face, or was a blank canvas on which I as a director could make a picture. I wouldn't want something that was too loud and grand and too Laurence Olivier of the pop world, which is maybe how I would tend to come across. And some people like Mick Jagger or whoever, you know, that they can maybe make it work for him, but he's probably better at it than I am and done it more often. With the few things we've done in video terms, I think the directors have had a hard job, because they come in with preconceived ideas about me, particularly as a performer, and it makes it difficult for them, I think, really. I think the only way to ever achieve anything, probably for me, to learn to do it myself, but I don't have the months or years that it would take for me to sit down and learn not only the art of it, but learn the actual, the physical and the engineering side of it as well. It's not a priority in my life to learn to make videos, but I would like to do it, because I would like to make a video that I thought was good. But you're constrained really by this 3.5 commercial-driven kind of rather constricting set of rules that you have to follow, because you're competing in a place where the whole point of a video is that it should be perhaps mildly broadly entertaining to the punters out there in TV land, but basically it's a promotional device. That's what all these things are for, to get you to spend your money on this act, to make this record company rich. And terrific, it's a great fun game to be involved in it, but it is just a game. And what are really being made are not mini movies or works of art. We're making TV commercials for, you know, pop people and the people who live off them.
Well, you don't
so seen in that context, you know, I mean, yes, to make commercials might be fun, but it's not a priority in my life.
You're more busy with fish, I understand.
She said, desperate to change the subject and get away from the exposé of the video
listen,
world.
don't tell me how
Fish are
commercial
terrific.
videos are. Ugh. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we play, I hate exactly that point, that they are 3-minute commercials, and it's hard to tell where the commercials are and where the videos are. It's all the same thing to me.
Right.
But now let's talk about
And you want
fish.
me to talk about my fish and promote those? Well, we don't really export what we do to Canada.
These would be little salmon fish, or big
Well,
salmon
they're quite big
fish.
ones, actually, yes. if we're doing our job right. No, 10 years ago, I being Scottish by birth, I decided that I wanted to go back and do something in Scotland with some of the money that I'd been lucky enough to make over many years, and to do something with it moderately constructive by my turn. I just happen to think that it's faintly immoral to stash all the money in a Swiss bank or put it into the stock market and get money back for doing nothing other than sitting on your bum and reading the papers every day to see how your shares are doing. So I wanted to do something with it in which I would be controlled. I would be in control, and therefore it would be something that would be economically viable, ideally in West Coast Scotland, which is an area that I'm particularly fond of, where there's very high unemployment, zero job prospects for school leavers, and I went into the weird and wonderful world of marine aquaculture, which at that point was more or less in its infancy, certainly commercially speaking it was, and that's what I've been doing ever since. We now run 6 salmon farms and a processing plant in the Highlands of Scotland, and we export our smoked salmon to Belgium and France and Japan and Australia and a bit in the UK and a little bit in the US.
Well, it's hard to imagine, and it's probably quite possible that you would end up being a big name in salmon fishing, because when I think of Jethro Tull, when it comes right down to it, there are 2 albums, Thick as a Brick and Aqualung, that are classic albums, and you know that so many people have them, and it's just part of rock and roll and growing up, are those 2 albums. Do you think of those as classic albums? Like for you, do they hit a point in you, touch something in you that they did in all kinds of North Americans?
Well, they do, but primarily because they're things that we play in concert. I mean, you know, still bits of Aqualung that we play on stage, and therefore those songs do have a relevance now. I don't really see them in a historical perspective, because they're part of today. They're part of what I'll be doing in whatever it is, 5-6 hours time. So they are as now as anything else is. So yeah, I mean, I think they work because they actually, excuse me, must have some intrinsic musicality that makes them work for some people today. And people do say, even young people, I mean people in their sort of late teens, early 20s that I talk to, say we grew up with Jethro Tull. We're something that was kind of always there, like their favorite breakfast cereal, or you know, Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck may have been for the generation before them. We're just something that was always there, but not there perhaps in the conspicuous way of, you know, television kind of presence or any political presence. We're there in a slightly safer kind of underground way. We are what people want us to be. We are what people perceive us to be, either through the eyes of nostalgia in terms of the slightly older people, or in terms of the people who grew up with Jethro Tull, in terms of this sort of presence of something which seems safe and reliable, and once in a while comes out with a new record and a new tour, so it's still sufficiently current to have their ongoing interest. Strange world.
It's coming out right now, because we wanted to, we pulled this one out, and we wanted to play Aqualung and say thank you very much for coming, and
thank you very much
on
for
the
having
show.
me. Almost nobody else will.
We will. Here's Aqualung.
Except I've done more TV shows in the last year on the salmon business than I have about the music business. Ian Anderson, the salmon farm, is actually becoming more famous than Ian Anderson, the musician. But here I am on tour, and here is Aqualung. Nice to see you.
I was going to say, if you're going to send us promotion.
Hey, sitting on the